right, welcome. Thanks for joining. This is our first session in our 5-part series on laser cutting. So today we're going to get into just an introduction. We're going to talk about our laser, what we can do with our laser, kind of set the tone for what's upcoming. And we're also going to show you how to use some basic tools. We're going to use Google Drawings today to create something that can be laser cut. So Sloan is going to talk a little bit here in just a minute about our setup. And you can take a look at how you can set your laser up in your school. So let's go over to Sloan.
Hi, I'm Sloan, and I'm going to show you a little bit about our setup and our laser. So as you can see over here in our little Maker Series corner of our Maker Hub, we have a couple of things going on. We have a nice workstation that's close to our laser setup, and we have the full spectrum Muse laser. You're going to see that it is on this really nice rolling cart. We got it from Home Depot. It was only about $400. The fact that it's on wheels is significant because this laser is pretty heavy, so it's kind of hard to move if it's not on wheels. And we definitely want to be able to get it close to a window because the way the exhaust system works, it goes out through a vent hose similar to that of a dryer. So another thing that we definitely would, that you would want to consider whenever you're thinking about your setup in your school would be the proximity of the Ethernet cord, the network connection, so that you can get this plugged in because it does have to actually be plugged in. It's not just going to be Wi-Fi. And then you also are going to need access to a bunch of power outlets. So we have ours in our cart actually has a like a power strip kind of thing on the side, so you can plug multiple cords into that. So with our full spectrum laser, we also have a riser, and that's why it sits up a little bit higher than some of them may. This allows us to use a couple of different accessories like the spinner to make cups and that kind of thing. So another thing to point out is you always want to have a water bottle close by just in case you need it. And this right here is actually our water cooler. So that is what that helps the laser stay cool during this process. And back here is our exhaust fan. So you see the silver, I'll show you kind of a close-up of it more in a little bit, but you'll see the silver dryer vent looking hose going out through the back of the window. Another thing that's really nice about our setup is that the storage is built in, because when you get started with laser projects, you're going to want to try all sorts of different materials. So we have different drawers for different sizes of wood. We have cardboard. We have little trinkets and things that you can kind of make as you're going. So these are all some things that you might want to consider.
One of the things that we really like about the lasers is that it's really easy to use from the creation standpoint, where you can have really young students all the way up to your high schoolers using these lasers for a variety of different projects. So today we're going to show you how easy it is, and we're going to use Google Drawings in order to produce something like this. So this is just a name badge that can be put on your desk, hung out in the hallway. Of course, this one's got some engraving in there, and it was cut out of a piece of wood, all done in Google Drawings. So on your device, Chromebooks included, you can go to Google Drive and Drawings. If you go to your New button and go down to More, Drawings is the first one in that list. So go ahead and click on that, and it'll open up Google Drawings. I already have one opened up here. So once you've opened up Google Drawings, you'll see your workspace here. One thing to note is this has got a checkered background. That checkered background represents a transparent background. It's not white, it's transparent. So anything other than what you create on there, all of this background, once you download it as a PDF, there won't be anything there to be printed on the laser. So what we want to do now is we're going to go ahead and we are going to use our rulers. So laser cutting really helps to support math, measurement, and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and take a ruler or a tape measure, and you're going to decide, how big of a nameplate you want. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And once you've got that figured out, you're going to go ahead and you're going to use your shape tool to create that cutout. So your shape tools are right here. So you can go ahead, it gives you some basic shapes, 4 basic shapes. We're going to use the rectangle shape. I'm going to use my mouse for this, it's a little easier. So we're going to go to our rectangle, and we'll click and we will drag out. And you don't have to worry too much about what the size is right now. One thing to notice is, you can get really close. There's a ruler that runs along the top. There's also a ruler that runs along the side, something to point out with your students. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make this shape exactly the size that we want it. So in this case, this one here is 8 inches by 1.5 inches. So with this clicked here, I'm going to go up to my format options, and it'll open up this panel over here. In the top, you'll see, and remember that shape is selected, you can see the width and the height. So I want it to be 8 and 1.5. I'm going to go ahead, click in here. I'm going to change that. 8, unit measures inches. Then I'll go over here and I'll change that to 1.5. And now that's exactly the size that I want it in the real world. It's about making the connections from what we see here and what it will look like in the real world. Really helps to reinforce units of measure and get students to really understand that. I'm going to go ahead and move this over to the upper left-hand corner. Okay. And I'm actually going to kind of reduce the size of this workspace. I got a lot of extra space in here that I don't really need. So in the lower corner down here, you'll see a little handle that you can go ahead and grab onto. And you can just move that up and get it kind of close to your shape. Now, people think that, wait a minute, that just made my shape larger. No, it didn't. Look at the ruler. So now the ruler has changed its size just a little bit. Okay? We're still the same size, and if we click on it, we can see that over here. All right? So this, again, helps to reinforce to students that what you see on the screen, even though it looks big, in the real world is 8 by 1.5. It's this big. Okay? So at this point now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and grab an image. You can see here a really tiny image. This is our BCSD logo. So we're going to go out onto the web, or if you have this image already on your computer, we're going to go ahead and we're going to just copy and paste, or you can use the insert button up here to grab an image that's on your computer, or you can search the web. But I already have it queued up back here. I did a search for laser cutting. This is what I want. I'm just going to do a copy. I'm going to go into back to drawings, and I'm going to do a paste. All right. Now, when you do an image search, one of the things you want to look for is, you want to have things that have a transparent background. Some of these images, when, if I copied them and brought them in, would have like a white background or things like that. So the Noun Project is a great site to go to and find things that are free to use. And the other thing that you want to keep in mind is copyright. A lot of people like to use their lasers to do fundraising, which is a great thing, get students involved in that whole process, but you can get yourself in trouble by going out and copying things that have paid rights, putting them on something that you're ultimately going to use to make money. So be careful on that, err on the side of caution. So I'm going to take this shape here, and I kind of want it off. It's pretty much in the right spot. I'm going to move it. Now, one of the things to look at and notice in Google Drawings is that as you move things, like right now, it's telling me that my image that I just copy and pasted is in vertically centered with my name badge. If I move it over here, now I can see that it's not only vertically, but it's also horizontally centered. So, it's a really great tool for helping to, arrange the things that you're putting on here. All right, so my image is there. Now I want to put my name on there. I'm going to use the insert word art, and I'm going to type my name. And I'll hit enter. There's my name. Now, just like anything else in here, you can format this, by adding in an exact size. Or in this case, I'm going to do it more by eye, and I'm just going to move it and use the corner handles to just kind of drag it down. Okay. And the next thing that I'm going to put on there is I'm going to put my title. So I'm an innovative learning coordinator. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to go up and insert a word art and type that in. insert word art. Okay, and I'll hit enter. And it's a little too big, so I'm going to just drag it and do a little quick resize on this. Just like that. Notice that little red line coming up. Let me know that my Innovative Learning Coordinator title is centered up underneath my name. So point those things out to your students. So right now I have my components that I want on my name badge all set up and arranged, and it's the right size. But I want to do a couple other things to clean this up and get it ready to take over to this Retina Engrave program, which is what runs our laser. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to get rid of this background blue color. The laser is going to see this blue, and what it's going to try to do is it's going to try to make that into a, it can't laser cut in blue color, but if I'm cutting on wood, it will burn into the wood to try to give a shading in there. I don't want any shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that shape, and up here you see a paint bucket. You can click the paint bucket and just say transparent, and that way there is no color at all. That shape is now only just a line. All right, now that line represents what I'm going to cut out of the wood. So for me, I want to make that, I'm going to make that a red color, so that when I get over into Retina Engrave, the red line is going to represent something that goes all the way through my wood. Don't change the border thickness. Don't leave it as thin as you can. Okay. So now you can see it's got a red line. The next thing I want to look at is my name. So my name has a border and it has shading. I don't want any shading in there. I don't want it to look like this. I want it to look more like this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my name. I'm going to do the same kind of steps that I just did. I'm going to click on the color fill. I'm going to transparent. And for this one here, I don't want it to go all the way through like the red line. I just want it to go a little ways through. So for me, I'm going to make that blue, and that blue color will, for me, when I'm setting up my project, remind me that, hey, look, this is only, this vector line is only to go partially into the wood. This one down here, it's shaded. It's got a blue shading. I'm going to go ahead. I do want that to look like this here. I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in with black. Okay. So now, all the way cut out, traced out, and burned in, like in rastered in. And then that's also going to be rastered in. So I'm all set with this project. And now in order to get it ready to take over to my laser cutting software, I'm going to go up to the File menu. I'm going to go Download. Gives me 4 options. I'm going to choose PDF document. It's going to download it to my downloads. And at this point now, I'm ready to go ahead, connect to my laser, and then get it set up in there.
So the steps to get your image from Google Drawings into Retina Engrave 3 are as follows. Our image is ready to go right here. You can see that the red line is the vector line that we were wanting the laser to cut all the way through. So we're going to actually do this in 2 parts. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete the vector line so that I can download the image of just the part that I want engraved or rastered. So I'm just going to select that, right click, cut. I could have also just clicked the delete button or the backspace button. I'm going to change the name to Nameplate Demo Raster because everything that you can see here is what I want to be engraved, not cut through or vectored. So I'm going to do File, Download, PDF. All right, so now you can see this raster part is ready to go down at the bottom of my screen. I'm simply going to undo to put the vector line back in. Now I'm going to delete out the raster images. So I'm just clicking it and clicking cut. All right, I'm going to change the name to vector since this red line is the vector line. File, download PDF. Okay, so I have my 2 PDFs ready to go. I'm gonna go into the other tab and remember that I got this IP address from the touchscreen panel on our laser. That's how I'm connecting to it. You can see that it's zoomed in a little, so I'm gonna zoom out and kind of get my workspace ready. I'm gonna click Create New Projects over here on the left side under the project panel. And now I'm ready to import or upload my first part. So I'm going to start with my vector. I'm going to choose image drawing and nameplate demo vector. I'm going to select the file and click open. Now it's giving me the choice of which parts I want to import. I'm going to unclick raster because right now I'm just doing the vector. All right, so now I can see my line. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. If you can't move it around, just grab that hand tool and then unclick it when you're ready to use it. So as you can see, there's a black line around the red line, and the red line was the vector line that I originally wanted to cut. So if I click on the drop down arrow next to this vector file, I can select each element. So this element 0 appears to be the black line, which is actually that canvas from Google Drawing. So it's just looking at the dimensions of the actual canvas, and it turned that into a vector line. So I can simply click on element 0. I can change this passes to 0 so that it won't cut it, or I can just pull this element all the way out by selecting the element and clicking the trash can to delete that layer. All right, now it looks like there's actually 2. Okay, so see when I click on element 1, how that turned to a black line too. I'm also just going to delete that one out since I don't need it. So now the only line I have in here is element 2, which is that original red vector line that we created over here in Google Drawings. So this was my original file, and here's what I have now. So the next step is going to be to pull in that raster file for the engraving. So I'm going to click File, Import, Image Drawing. Nameplate Demo Raster, Open. Now I don't want this to be recognized as a vector, so I'm just going to make sure only raster is checked and click OK. All right, so I'm just going to drag this raster file right here into the middle of that vector file so that it will raster what's in the inside and cut what's on the outside. So now I'm looking over here in the Layers and Objects panel of my screen in Retina Engrave, and I just want to check one thing to make sure that the raster comes first and then the vector comes, because the way that the laser is going to process this job is from top to bottom. So you don't want it to cut out first and then raster, because then it may be a different distance from the laser than was originally planned. So my raster file is in the right spot. If for some reason the vector came first, I could just grab it and drop it up to the top, but I don't need to do that. So now I'm looking over here on when I select the raster part, it's going to bring up the, give me just a second. Here we go. So down here where it has the little image icon to the left, you can see that the raster image is blue and it's selected over here in the workspace. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I'm going to look at these raster properties. Remember, next week we're going to get into this more, but since this is text and pretty simple images, I'm going to select threshold and change this to 500 by 500, and I'm going to change the power down to 80. Again, we know our material, we've been using it for a while, we know that these properties work. Okay, so looks like we are ready to send the job over to the printer. The last thing I want to make sure to do is name this project, because anyone who's connecting to your laser is going to be in the same exact site. So if you see over here on the left side how it says new project, new project, new project, new project, it would be very hard to say, Brittany, we're ready to print yours, Sloan, we're ready to print yours, if we don't give it a specific name. So I'm just going to name it Phil Sheridan nameplate. So now, whoop, I did not click enter. Phil Sheridan nameplate. Enter. Okay, so now you can see the project name over here in the project list to the left. So it's easier to find which project you're looking to print one at a time so that kids aren't working on top of each other or teachers or whoever's using it. All right, so we would be ready to now put the material in the printer, run that perimeter to make sure that it lines up, and then run the job when we're ready to go.
So we are ready to actually press the button and make our product. So I have our material that we're going to use. Our wood was a little bit too long. We know that our workspace within our laser is 20 inches wide, so I just measured out 20 inches, and then I just used our box cutter and scored it several times, hanging off the table of course, and then broke it off. So the next steps we would need to do would be to make sure that our machine is on. Ours is all connected through a power switch over here on the side. We've actually already turned it on because one unique thing about the Retina Engrave system is you actually have to have the laser on while you're designing in Retina Engrave if you're connected through the IP address. So it would have to be on for us to get to this point so far. So I'm just going to move the image up to the top right corner. This is kind of where the laser hangs out when it's not in use. So if I'm looking at this board and I'm looking at this workspace, I can tell that this is going to be about the space that's kind of cut off. So I'm just going to sort of eyeball it. There's a nice perimeter feature that we can use so that we can make sure that the laser's kind of lined up, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm just going to open up the glass, place my board on the grate, line it up with the laser. Notice it's kind of quiet in here, so what I need to do is cut on my loud water cooling system, so please pardon me if you can't hear me too well. And then we're going to stick our dryer vent out the window, give it a little shove, so that our exhaust doesn't come back into the room, because when you're burning materials with a laser, like wood or cardboard, it does create the smell of burning wood or cardboard. So we want to make sure that it's ventilated properly. So one thing I'm going to do, like I mentioned, the run perimeter feature, I'm just going to click the run perimeter button. And the nice thing about this tool too is when you hover over the different icons, it tells you what they're going to do. So when I click there, it's sending it over, and I can actually open up the glass. So I can see the red laser is tracing where it's eventually going to cut. So let's say the laser was zooming here, I could just kind of take my hand and move it up or down or wherever I needed to move it to make sure that it was going to cut it in the place that I wanted. So it looks like I might just come over a little more with it so that it gets as close to the edge as it kind of can. Want to make sure to kind of reduce as much waste as possible, even though we do use all of our scraps. So now I'm just going to click the same button one more time to stop the perimeter. So we know everything's all set, checked all of our settings, so now we're ready to send it to the printer. So I'm looking for this blue Run Job button. So I'm just going to click it. There's also some of these same controls mimicked over here on the LCD screen. Sometimes they don't work as well on the LCD screen as they do from the computer. But you'll see that it is now running the job. So I can see the laser lighting up as it's running back and forth across the top of the piece of wood as it's rastering that image. Alright, looks like everything's done, so we're going to go ahead and shut everything down and take it out and see our project. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off this super loud air cooler. And here I'm pulling my thing so I can shut the window. And kill the power. Alright, here's our project. So, you can see the big piece of wood that we had. Any little mistakes, you can always flip them over and try again, and then I'm just going to kind of pop it out. You can also kind of see on the back, see there's a couple places where maybe it didn't cut quite all the way through. So if you want to make sure that the wood doesn't split, you can just take your box cutter and just kind of lightly go over those so that it's a nice clean pop out. Or if you don't really care, you can just pop it right out, and you'll always be able to just take a little sandpaper to it, that kind of thing, to make it work. So here's our final project, Phil's nameplate. You can see too, if you kind of zoom in, what he was talking about with the vector. So this vector cut all the way out through the wood. You can see in his name how my fingernail can kind of get into that groove. So that vector was at the 50%, I think. It cut into the wood, unlike just this part, which was engraved or rastered. So it just has a little bit of a different look. You can see some little bits of charred spots right there. That's why it's important to use your materials and kind of test them out before you get into the part where you're really doing it with students and spending you know, tons of money on expensive materials and then ending up ruining them. And in level 3 of our series, we're really going to dig into that a little deeper. So hope yours turned out great.